When I heard that there was going to be a conference on charitable giving at the University of Chicago, I was certainly interested since I studied charitable giving. But then I heard that it was going to be a conference which was going to blend academic work with practitioners and try to see if we could get the best of both worlds. You know, academicians learning from practitioners, practitioners learning from researchers. And to be honest with you, I was very skeptical that that was going to be a good idea. I have been a part of a few enterprises like that, and they went pretty badly. It's an idea that sounds great in theory, but doesn't always work out. So I was very pleasantly surprised last year when I went to the conference, because it actually did work out. In fact, I have never been to a conference that did a better job of combining scholarship with real-world practitioners in a way that everybody benefited from. It set the bar, at least in my experience, for how you could run a conference that way. So I was really happy with the conference last year. So when they said, hey, do you want to come back? I said, sure.
SPI has been a terrific partner, both connecting me with the researchers that we're working with and also hosting this amazing conference, which is just a terrific opportunity to learn about the state of giving research.
We're obviously really grateful to SPI for providing us with the opportunity to work with Remember Charity and to continue this work going forward. We're also really grateful to having been invited to the conference to speak and share our work. Moving forward, I also think there's sort of, in order for field experiments to be the new normal rather than sitting in a darkened room somewhere in a basement typing into Stata, we really need more partnerships and more opportunities to come together, because there are hundreds of thousands of charities, of corporates, of government departments and all kinds of other organisations out there that have problems and puzzles that they're clamouring for solutions to, and certainly thousands of academics out there who are clamouring to provide those solutions. And if we don't have an environment like SPI where we can come together and facilitate, like merging those two things together, matchmaking almost, I sort of view this as like an academic version of Match.com maybe, then without that nothing's ever going to happen, and so it's an amazing opportunity to be here.
I've been interested in SPI for a really long time. I saw John speak at an AFP conference last year, so we've been interested at CCS for a long time in what SPI is doing, so I came to the conference to check it out. I thought it was fantastic. The topics were really interesting. I felt that a lot of the researchers who were presented their studies in a way that was very applicable and relatable, in layman's terms, I guess you could say, so it was really easy to understand and just really interesting. I think I would just like our clients to know that there is research being done in this area, which I wasn't aware of, just the massive amount of research that's being done, and a lot of the research just is kind of confirming a lot of what we know through our practice, but having that finite research to back it up, I think, is really important and really adds to the profession as a whole.
Good morning and welcome to SPI Annual Conference 2015. Welcome to the University of Chicago. My name is Edie Dobraz, and I am the Executive Director of SPI. Hosting a conference on September 11th has given our team an opportunity to reflect on the significance of the 14th anniversary of that tragic day. Although September 11th reminds us of evil, the day also reminds us of philanthropy, defined as humans' capacity for goodwill. As we witness many courageous and generous acts on that day and in the aftermath. With this in mind, today is the perfect day for us to convene and explore the science and art of philanthropy. Before I turn the program over to our project leader, John List, I have many people to thank for making this conference possible. First and foremost, the John Templeton Foundation, represented here today by Kamon Sargent and Chris Stosky. Thank you. To our presenters, we are so grateful to you for traveling from as far away as Asia and Europe and dealing with a lot of travel issues to present your work and perspectives today. I also want to thank our Practitioner Advisory Board. Ivan, Grant, Maria, Chuck, and Jim, can you please stand? Please, don't be shy. I personally want to thank these people because without them, well, first of all, they respond to my annoying emails and constant questions. I don't feel like a project led by scholars would be so connected to the sector as you see how many organizations we've connected with. So thank you. I also want to thank the SPI administrative team and volunteers who have made this conference possible. Elena, Hannah, Sarup, who did that amazing video. Shannon and Deborah, you are an amazing team, and in the words of Olivia Pope, or like Olivia Pope, they just handle it. So thank you. It's a delight to work with you. A special thanks to Jen List for creating the graphics for our printed program. It's really kind of her. We also have a host of other volunteers. I want to especially mention Vani and Rachel. Vani's right in the front here, who reached out to us from Northwestern to volunteer. So wonderful to have representation from Northwestern, which reminds me of something I've noticed about our participants this year. SPI is known for bringing together academics and practitioners, but now we will be also known for bringing together Wildcats and Maroons. And also a great victory against Stanford. That was awesome last weekend. So I've decided to organize a little competition. Please look in your conference folders. You'll see some colored note cards. As you are listening to the talks today, please write down new lines of thought, questions, or ideas that you think should be further explored and turn them in at the front desk. When you turn them in, you will get to choose from either Northwestern or UChicago swag, and Vani has volunteered, well actually I made her volunteer, to model some examples of some things we'll give away. So. Not even a comparison there. So we'll see what happens, what gets taken the most. But that is not the only incentive we are offering. We are led by economists, after all. When you turn in your conference evaluation, we will also give you a bag of Garrett's popcorn. So whatever it takes to get people to participate. Finally, I speak for the entire SPI team as I offer thanks to our project leader, John List, for inspiring SPI and pushing us to change the world. I turn it over the program to John.
Dee, that was very nice, thank you. I'm going to start with a few thanks as well. I want to start by saying please stand up, the Templeton guys. I really do want to say thank you. Templeton has been a full partner from the very beginning. And they've pushed the project, they've pushed us, they've obviously lent great financial resources, and I think that overall, it helps us actually show that economics is a science. People out in the real world sometimes doubt that. They say, well, is economics a real science? I think we have shown that it is. Now, secondly, we have shown that science can inform philanthropy. And I think all of us over the last 3 years have learned that. And we've learned some great lessons, which we'll talk about over the next 2 days. Now, I also want to thank all of you, because the only way the partnerships could work is if the practitioners and academics both stepped forward and said, let's learn something from each other. So I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, all of the practitioners and academics. And finally, as Edie said, look, I don't really do anything. The team does everything. It's Edie and it's the rest of the team, and I'm kind of along for the ride, getting a bunch of credit where really the credit should be to the team. And I've left out a lot of names here, but I want to say thank you very much to the team as well. Okay? Now, after the big thanks, I want to say welcome, everyone. Welcome, friends and colleagues, to the University of Chicago. And I'm here today to lend some thoughts on the charitable sector. And I'm going to start with this simple figure, which plots the S&P 500 over time. This is one measure that economists like to use to say the economy's really done well. This is charted from 1971 to 2011, and as you can see, it's gone up about 12-fold, the S&P 500. Now, when you plot individual giving over that same time period, you see something dramatic. Individual gifts to charity has risen by about the exact same amount. This has led many experts to claim that this is just a great sector in our economy, growing exponentially. The problem is getting the basket under the tree in the right spot. Well, let's look at this in a different way. Let's look at giving as a percent of income. That's what we find. It's been flat. It's about 2%. Well, what's going on here? It looked really vibrant before. Now it doesn't look so vibrant. Well, what I think, as Edie said, I'm an economist after all. There's a supply problem and there's a demand problem here. We have not supplied the advice that's needed. Practitioners have not demanded the advice that's needed. So that got us started with SPI. And the origins were quite simple. Let's look at every drive as a means to learn something about why people give. We want to raise money, no doubt about that. But we also want to learn why people give. So the idea about a laboratory of innovation came about 3 or 4 years ago. And we wanted charities around the world to be constantly running experiments. And then learning about what works and why. In this way, the scientific method could revolutionize fundraising. Now, one way to think about it is in this simple charity market. We have the government, we have people, and we have charities. What we focused on is this branch right down here. We have a few studies up here and a few studies there as well, but we focused right down here in setting up partnerships to learn about how do we expand the charitable pie. Now, along this journey, we learned something that's kind of interesting. We learned that we can take these tools over here and apply the tools over to programs. You can use similar scientific tools that we use to learn about why people give to learn about what works. Why does it work? This is what we begin to call smart philanthropy. We want to learn about the actual outcomes that we care about and how effective our programs are. So you might ask, what does it take to be a smart philanthropist? I think of this in 4 steps. The first step is actually defining the outcome metrics that we care about. Now, this is hard for many charities. Many times we talk about outcomes, but we never really take a stand on what we're trying to move. Now, after we define those metrics, we have to think about how do we measure those outcome metrics? What are the best ways to measure them? This is essentially what people call effective altruism. If you read the press, it's to gather data. It's steps 1 and 2, effective philanthropy or effective altruism. But it takes more than this. It takes more than steps 1 and 2. We need to first think about when we design our program, we need to design it in a way that allows measurement. So before we actually roll out the program, we need to think about what will we measure and how will we measure. Now, in many cases, when I talk to people, they say, our program is great. They don't have a control group. 99% of the time, no control group. Lack of thought in their program design in terms of power. So even when they attempt an experiment, it's very low powered, so it's hard to test hypotheses. This is where academics can really help. They can help you think about the proper control group, help you think about how to design the experiment. Now, after you've set up the program to learn, you then, in step 4, you learn something, but many of us don't have a good idea about how to use it. Many companies have data just lying around, and they're not sure how to use those insights from the data. Now, after those 4 steps, you can say, is that it? And of course, my answer is going to be no. There's also this thing called heterogeneity. How many people have heard of heterogeneity? Some of you might say, is that a disease? Okay, it's not a disease. Some people might say, is it curable? Okay, we can use heterogeneity to our advantage, and let me explain what heterogeneity is. This is a typical job training program. This comes from one of my colleagues, Jim Heckman, from several years ago. This is a distribution of outcomes from that job training program. On the x-axis, I have increase in earnings. Where is that centered? It's centered on 0. You would conclude that the policy has a 0 effect. Most policies are like that. They're centered around 0. I'm convinced of that. Most programs are like this one. But what that means is that some people are helped. The program had a different effect for different people. That's heterogeneity. In this case, David was not helped, but a few of the women were helped. So what does that mean? That means we should find a program that helps David, helps the Davids of the world. And we can do that if we systematically test our programs and look for heterogeneity. That's the only means in which, when we get this distribution, we can figure out where are people and who are we helping with our program. Now, this really hits home. We started about 4 years ago a program in Chicago Heights. We started our own schools, and we have a parent academy within those schools where we teach the parents directly rather than teaching the children. And one of the results that pops out of there is that our parent academy really, really helps Hispanics and Caucasians. The parent academy, in fact, is brilliant for those families. But for African Americans, it wasn't so good. In fact, it was really, really close to 0. There's important heterogeneity out there, and we need to figure out, why did the Parent Academy work over here, but not over here? And what types of programs can we roll out to help African American kids? Every program will have a distribution of outcomes, and we need to figure out, do our programs work, and which groups or which sets of people does our program work best for? We can only do that if we engage in the simple 4 steps of measuring exactly what our programs are doing. So that's where SPI is going over the next several years. And as you can see, we're not totally abandoning that first chain in the market. We're still thinking about, why do people give? There are many, many unanswered questions in that area. But we're simply taking the method and applying it in a simple way to look at programs. Okay? So in closing, I want to thank you all. I think we've made some strides. We've learned, we've built a lot of partnerships. But it's really clear that there is a long ways to go here. This journey, in some ways, is just beginning for the scientists and I think for many of the practitioners. So I'm going to close by saying we look forward to continuing our partnerships. Thanks again, everyone, for being here, and let's have a great conference.